A CEO asked her to enter a 30-day marriage contract, until one unexpected confession turned it into something real. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The soft hum of the city still echoed in Ava Hart's ears as she stood inside coal industry's top-floor conference room. A glass box floating above Manhattan. Cold, perfect, untouchable. Just like the man sitting across from her. Ethan Cole, the youngest CEO in the company's history. A man whose name appeared on magazine covers and investor reports, but whose expression almost never moved. Tonight was no different. Midnight lights spilled in through the towering windows, casting sharp lines across the polished table. Ava clutched her tote bag tighter, aware of the frayed seams, aware of her second-hand blouse, aware that she didn't belong in a place where even the air smelled expensive. She had only been a temp contract worker for 3 weeks. 3 chaotic, nerve-wracking weeks. And now she was standing across from the CEO himself. "Ms. Hart," Ethan said, sliding a thin folder toward her with the quiet precision of a man who never wasted movement. "Sit." His voice was calm, but it wasn't a request. Ava obeyed, her heartbeat thudding like it was trying to punch its way out. She swallowed hard. "Sir, the assistant downstairs said you needed signatures from the legal." "I need something else," he cut in, eyes locked on her like he was evaluating every breath she took. He tapped the folder once. "Open it." Ava hesitated, then flipped it open, and nearly forgot how breathing worked. Her name, his name, dates, terms. A bold headline, marriage agreement, 30 days. Her throat tightened. This looks like a joke." "It isn't," Ethan replied, leaning back in his chair. "I need a temporary wife. 30 days. Appearances only. You will be compensated, your debt will be cleared, and your mother's medical bills will be covered in full." Ava's stomach dropped. How did he even know about those bills? She looked up sharply, but Ethan's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker. "Why me?" she whispered. Ethan studied her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. "Because you're ordinary," he finally said. "Real. And you have nothing to gain by betraying me." The words should have stung, but there was something in his tone, a tightness, a quiet edge, that made it sound less like an insult and more like fear. No, that couldn't be right. He was a CEO, untouchable, unshakable. Meanwhile, Ava's world was falling apart. Her eviction notice taped to her apartment door, her mother needing another round of treatment she couldn't afford, her paycheck barely covering groceries. Something inside her wavered. Ethan slid a pen across the table. 30 days. 3 conditions, he said, voice steady. No love, no interference in each other's personal lives, and no backing out before the 30 days are up. Ava stared at the pen, at the paper, at the man whose face looked carved from stone. Her pulse hammered. She didn't want this. She didn't trust it. But survival didn't leave room for pride. And that was the moment, right there, with her hand trembling over the contract, that her life quietly split in two, the life she had known, and the one waiting on the other side of her signature. For a long moment after Ava's fingers brushed the pen, she could not bring herself to move. The city lights outside the floor-to-ceiling windows flickered against the glass, reflecting back at her like a warning. Ethan Cole waited in absolute stillness, elbows on the table, watching her with the same unreadable calm he used in board meetings. It made her chest tighten. A normal man would at least look awkward asking for a 30-day marriage, she thought. But Ethan did not look nervous. He looked strategic, which somehow made it even worse. Ava inhaled slowly, the air cold against the back of her throat. "If I sign this," she whispered, "what happens next?" Ethan did not blink. "You move into my penthouse tomorrow morning. We will announce the marriage to my board at the investor gathering on Friday. From that moment on, you and I are a united front." A united front. Ava almost laughed at how surreal it sounded. She had spent the last week eating dollar store ramen in her small apartment with a broken heater. Now a billionaire was mapping out her next 30 days like it was a corporate strategy. She stared down at the document again. The lines blurred for a moment as panic rushed through her. She imagined her mother, exhausted in the small clinic bed, apologizing for being a burden. She imagined the overdue notice taped to their door. And she imagined herself at 27, standing here with nothing left to lose. Her hand moved before her courage could disappear. The pen touched the paper. A shaky signature. A done deal. Something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. Or relief. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He stood, closing the folder with a decisive snap. You will receive a new phone and an access badge from my assistant downstairs. She will coordinate everything from wardrobe to transportation. Ava swallowed hard. Wardrobe. People will expect a certain presentation, Ethan said. You are stepping into my world. I will not let anyone tear you apart in it. There was something strangely protective in his tone, like steel softened by something human. But Ethan caught himself and straightened, the moment dissolving. This arrangement begins now, Miss Hart. He walked to the door and opened it for her. The gesture startled her more than everything else tonight. CEOs did not open doors for temps. She stepped into the hallway, still dizzy from what she had just done. Ethan's voice followed her, low and steady. A car will take you home. Pack only what you need. Your new residence is ready. Her new residence. The words felt heavy. When she reached the elevator, she pressed her palm against the cool railing, trying to steady the spinning in her head. 30 days. A penthouse. A contract marriage with a man who seemed carved from ice and ambition. What had she just agreed to? The elevator chimed. She stepped inside, the door sliding shut like the world's ceiling behind her. For the first time that night, her breath trembled. Tomorrow, her life would no longer belong to her. She did not know it yet, but Ethan Cole was already watching her from the conference room doorway, jaw tight, a shadow crossing his expression. As if he was wondering not whether Ava Hart could handle his world, but whether his world could handle her. And the part he did not say out loud, the part buried under every rule he had written. In that contract, was this. Something about her scared him. Not because she was dangerous, but because she was real. And reality was the one thing Ethan Cole had spent years avoiding. It had been less than 12 hours since Ava signed the contract. And yet everything about the morning felt like it belonged to an entirely different lifetime. The black sedan sent by Ethan pulled up to her old apartment building exactly at 7 o'clock, its engine humming quietly against the noise of the neighborhood. Ava stepped outside carrying a single suitcase, the same one she had owned since college. The driver, a middle-aged man with calm eyes, took it gently from her hands. Miss Hart, Mr. Cole asked me to bring you straight to the residence, he said. If there is anything missing from your living essentials, the staff will make sure it is delivered before noon. Ava nodded, unsure how to respond to a world that seemed to reshape itself around her with every step. She climbed into the back seat, sinking into leather so soft it felt unreal. As the car pulled away from the cracked sidewalk of her neighborhood, she watched the only life she had ever known shrink in the rearview mirror. She did not let herself look away until the last familiar corner disappeared. By the time the car reached Midtown, her pulse had settled into a nervous rhythm. The penthouse tower rose above the skyline like a glass blade, its surface catching the early sunlight. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent except for the steady lift of her breathing. When the doors opened, she stepped into a private foyer with marble floors and soft ambient lighting. A woman in a tailored suit was waiting. Good morning, Miss Hart. My name is Claire. I manage Mr. Cole's household operations. She gestured for Ava to follow. Let me show you to your room and review the schedule for today. Ava trailed behind her through a stunning open living space. All clean lines and warm stone textures. Floor-to-ceiling windows washed the room in light. It felt more like a luxury hotel than a home. Claire opened a door to a spacious bedroom. This will be yours. A stylist will arrive at 9. Mr. Cole has prepared outfits for the upcoming events, but they will be adjusted based on your measurements. Ava's throat tightened. Events. Claire nodded. The investor gathering on Friday is the most important. The board expects to meet Mr. Cole's spouse. Ava stared at the closet doors that stretched nearly wall to wall. Claire placed a folder on the bed. This contains a list of expected protocols. How to greet guests. How to stand beside Mr. Cole during public appearances. How to respond if asked about your relationship. Ava felt heat rise in her cheeks. So all of this starts today? Claire gave a reassuring smile. You will do well, Miss Hart. Mr. Cole chose you for a reason. Before Ava could ask what reason, the door to the penthouse opened with a soft click. Ethan stepped inside, dressed in a charcoal suit, tie perfectly aligned. His presence filled the room instantly. Ava straightened instinctively. Ethan's eyes swept briefly over her suitcase, then to her face. "Claire, thank you. I will take it from here." Claire nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Silence settled between them. Ava clasped her hands together, unsure of the rules in this strange new world. Ethan spoke first. "I trust the commute was comfortable." "Yes," she answered, though her voice wavered more than she liked. His gaze lingered on her for a moment, unreadable as always. Then he stepped farther into the room. "Ava, there is something you need to understand. From today forward, people will look at you differently. They will judge you, question your worth. Some will attempt to intimidate you." His voice softened in a way she did not expect. "But no one, absolutely no one, is allowed to disrespect you while you are at my side." Ava blinked, startled by the firmness in his tone. "Why tell me this?" His jaw tightened slightly. "Because this arrangement may be temporary, but your dignity is not." The words landed in her chest with surprising weight. Before she could respond, Ethan glanced at his watch. "You have 2 hours before the stylist arrives. Settle in. Review the protocols. If you have questions, ask me directly." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "And Ava," she looked up. Ethan held her gaze for a breath longer than necessary. "You belong here more than you think." Then he walked away, leaving her frozen in place, heart pounding, realizing for the first time that maybe this contract was not as simple as she believed. The stylist arrived exactly at 9 o'clock, just as Claire promised, carrying a rolling case that looked more like it belonged backstage at a fashion show than in a penthouse. Ava stood by the window, still trying to adjust to the idea that this incredible place was now considered her residence for the next 30 days. The woman introduced herself as Madison and began pulling out dresses in shades of midnight, rose gold, ivory, and deep emerald, each of them far beyond anything Ava had touched in her life. Mr. Cole requested elegance with subtle confidence, Madison said, lifting a gown with delicate beading that shimmered when the light hit it. "You will be attending high-profile corporate gatherings. Your attire needs to carry authority without losing softness." Ava almost choked. Authority? Her? She had spent the past few years blending into small office corners, hoping not to be noticed. But here, she would be noticed by everyone. Madison worked with swift precision, taking measurements, adjusting hemlines, showing Ava how to glide in heels without looking like her ankles might snap. Every touch, every instruction, felt like a reminder that her life had shifted overnight. After 2 hours, Ava finally had a moment alone. She stood in front of the full-length mirror, staring at the version of herself wearing a fitted charcoal gray dress that Madison said would be perfect for the first public appearance next week. Ava barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like she belonged in Ethan Cole's world. Almost. Just as she was adjusting the neckline, she heard footsteps behind her. "Ethan." He stopped in the doorway, and for a second, he did not say anything. He just looked at her. Ava felt her breath falter. She had never seen him pause like that, like his brain briefly forgot how to continue being Ethan Cole. "Is something wrong?" she asked carefully. Ethan's expression reset in an instant, cool and composed again. "No," he said, though his voice carried an edge she could not identify. Madison did well. Ava smoothed the side of the dress nervously. "I still feel like I am pretending." Ethan stepped into the room, his gaze steady. "Everyone is pretending, Ava. Most people just pretend better than others." She blinked at the unexpected truth in his tone, but he continued before she could respond. "We have an appointment downstairs in 15 minutes. A photographer will take formal couple photos for the investor announcement." "Couple photos," she repeated, chest tightening. "You mean, like real newlywed pictures?" Ethan's jaw flexed slightly. "Authenticity matters. The board is sharp. If they sense hesitation or emotional distance, this agreement collapses." Ava nodded slowly, trying to swallow her nerves. As they rode the private elevator down to the building's studio level, she became painfully aware of the small space, of how close Ethan stood beside her. He smelled like cedar and clean linen, and the air around him held a calm intensity she could not explain. The elevator doors opened to a minimalist photo studio. The photographer, a cheerful man with glasses, greeted them warmly. Mr. and Mrs. Cole, he said with a grin. Ethan did not correct him. Ava's heartbeat stumbled. The photographer guided them to stand close, positioning them with subtle touches to shoulders and arms. A little closer, he said. You are newly married, remember? Newly married. The words hit Ava harder than she expected. Ethan rested a hand lightly on her back. It was the first time he had touched her, and the world did not explode, but something inside her shifted, just slightly, as if her heart leaned forward without permission. Ethan's breath brushed her temple as he whispered, "It is just for the camera. Do not overthink it." Easy for him to say. Ava nodded, forcing herself to stay steady while the photographer snapped picture after picture. But then something unexpected happened. One angle required Ava to turn toward Ethan, their faces only inches apart. The photographer told them to hold the pose. Ethan looked into her eyes, and for one fleeting second, the world outside the camera lens fell away. The studio lights softened. Her breath caught. His fingers brushed hers, not part of the pose, not part of the act, just instinct. The photographer clicked the shot, oblivious to the shift in the air. Then Ethan blinked, the moment vanishing as quickly as it surfaced. "We are done here," he said, stepping back. But as they walked toward the elevator, Ava felt a strange heaviness in her chest, a feeling she could not name. A feeling that whispered the very thing she had promised herself would never happen. This contract was getting dangerous. Not because of Ethan's world, but because of Ethan. The rest of the day passed in a blur, but the moment that replayed in Ava's mind over and over again was the one inside the photo studio. The moment when Ethan's fingers brushed hers and her heartbeat reacted as if it had forgotten they were only performing. She told herself it meant nothing. She repeated it like a line she had to memorize. But by the time they returned to the penthouse, her thoughts were still tangled in that accidental touch. Claire greeted them with a clipboard in hand. "Mr. Cole, the board luncheon details are finalized. They asked if your wife will be attending." The word wife made Ava's stomach twist. Ethan nodded without hesitation. "She will." Ava looked at him sharply. "I will." Ethan turned slightly toward her, his voice calm but firm. "Our appearance needs to be consistent. Friday's event is the first test. The board luncheon is the second." Ava swallowed hard. "I just thought I would have more time to learn how to be all of this." His expression softened for a brief second. "You are doing fine." Claire headed off to prepare the schedule, leaving the two of them alone in the massive living space. Twilight filtered through the windows, tinting the skyline orange and gold. Ethan loosened his tie, the smallest crack in his polished armor. "There is something I should prepare you for," he said. "My family situation is complicated. The luncheon will not be friendly." Ava's eyebrows lifted. "Why not?" Ethan hesitated, then walked toward the bar countertop and rested a hand on the edge, as if debating how much to reveal. "My uncle, Charles, is leading a coalition to take control of coal industries. The board is split. A stable marriage strengthens my position. It makes me appear grounded and responsible." Ava stared at him, realization dawning. "So the contract is not just about image. It is about survival." "Corporate survival," Ethan corrected, though something flickered in his eyes that told her the line between corporate and personal was thinner than he liked to admit. Ava stepped closer, curiosity threading through her nerves. "Why me, Ethan? You could have chosen anyone. Someone from your world. Someone who already knows how to move through these circles." Ethan looked at her then, really looked, and the intensity of it sent a warm shiver down her spine. "That is exactly why you were the right choice," he said quietly. "You do not come with alliances. You do not come with ambition tied to my company. And people underestimate you." She almost laughed. "You say that like it is a strategy." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "Everything is a strategy." He paused, then added, softer, "But in your case, underestimation is an advantage. When people do not see you coming, you can walk straight through their defenses." Ava blinked, unsure whether to feel complimented or terrified. A small smile tugged at the corner of Ethan's mouth, but it disappeared just as quickly. He straightened again. "Tonight we will have dinner together here. Practice." Ava lifted an eyebrow. "Practice?" "For Friday," he replied. "For the board. For the stares you will receive from people who think you are not worthy to sit beside me." Ava felt a spark of something inside her, something stubborn. "And what do you think?" Ethan froze. She could see the muscles along his jaw tighten. His eyes held hers, steady and unreadable. I think, he said slowly, that it does not matter what I think. What matters is that you do not shrink in their presence. Ava expected that answer. She did not expect the faint, almost imperceptible warmth behind it. He crossed the room and opened the fridge, pulling out ingredients with a surprising familiarity. I will cook tonight, he added. Ava's jaw dropped. You cook? I am not completely useless outside the boardroom, he replied dryly. Sit. I will handle it. She obeyed, still stunned, watching the billionaire CEO move through the kitchen with ease, sleeves rolled up, tie discarded, hair slightly messy from the long day. He looked almost human like this. Maybe too human. As he sautéed vegetables, Ava found herself smiling, just a little. Ethan, she said softly, what exactly are we practicing during this dinner? He turned the pan with a practiced flick. Believability, he said. But then he looked at her again, and something in his eyes contradicted his own answer. For a brief moment, Ava sensed it. A shift, a crack, a spark that did not belong to the contract or the rehearsed story they were building. Something unscripted, something real, and it scared her more than everything else combined. The scent of garlic and herbs lingered in the kitchen long after Ethan set their plates on the dining table, and for the first time since Ava had stepped into his world, the penthouse felt almost warm. She tried to stay focused on the purpose of the dinner, but the atmosphere kept slipping into something softer, something that did not feel like practice at all. Ethan sat across from her, posture perfect even in a casual shirt with his sleeves rolled higher than before. We will start with simple questions, he said. The board will test us. They will ask about how we met, how long we have been together, what made us decide to marry. Ava nodded, though her throat tightened just thinking about it. Ethan began. Tell me, how did we meet? She took a breath. We met when I was working as a contract assistant. You came into the office one morning looking like you had barely slept, dropped your travel mug, and I picked it up for you. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That makes me sound careless. Ava smiled, a nervous but genuine smile. You were exhausted. It makes you look human. His lips twitched as if he almost smiled. Not bad, he said. Next question. When did you realize you had feelings for me? Ava froze. Her fork nearly slipped from her hand. She searched his face, trying to tell whether this was just training or a test of a different kind. Feelings, she echoed softly. Ethan held her gaze, unflinching. It is a reasonable question. They will expect an answer. Ava forced herself to breathe. I would say, she began slowly, that it happened in small ways. Little moments that did not seem important until they were. It was only half pretend. Ethan leaned back slightly, watching her with an expression she could not decode. Such as, she looked down at her plate for courage. Such as when you trusted me with things you did not trust your own staff with. Or when you listened to me, even when I thought you were not paying attention. Ethan's jaw tightened, and for a second he looked away. The reaction caught her off guard. He cleared his throat softly. Acceptable answer, he said, though his voice was quieter than before. They continued for several minutes, going through hypothetical questions, just as a real couple might be asked. But gradually, the line between practice and something else began to blur. Ava felt it most when Ethan reached for the wine bottle and refilled her glass without asking, an action so natural. It made her heart ache unexpectedly. Or when he corrected her gently on a detail, not out of impatience, but care. Or the way he listened, really listened, when she spoke. Halfway through the meal, Ava spoke without thinking. I never imagined my life would look like this. Ethan looked up slowly. In a good way or a bad way. That was the problem. She did not know how to answer. Both, she admitted. I feel like I am walking through someone else's story. I keep waiting to wake up. Ethan studied her with an intensity that made her skin warm. It feels like that for me too sometimes. She blinked. Your life feels unreal to you? Not my life, he said. This. The word hung between them, fragile and electric. Ava felt her heartbeat stumble. Before she could respond, Ethan shifted in his seat as if reminding himself of something. We should continue, he said, though the firmness in his tone had softened noticeably. He asked another question, then another, but the rhythm had changed. Something invisible had cracked open between them, letting in a light neither one knew what to do with. Later, when dinner ended, Ethan gathered the plates, insisting on cleaning up even when Ava offered to help. She watched him from the kitchen island, arms folded lightly, studying the way he moved with quiet precision. When he finished, he walked her toward her room. Tomorrow, he said, we will practice walking into a room together. People observe body language more than words. She nodded, but her focus kept drifting to the way he was standing so close, the faint scent of cedar surrounding him. Just as she reached her door, Ethan spoke again, his voice lower than before. Ava. She turned. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, not so much. You did well tonight, he said. Better than I expected. The compliment hit harder than it should have. Ava whispered, Good night, Ethan. For a moment he did not move. Then he nodded once, almost reluctant, before stepping back. When Ava closed the door behind her, she pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady the rush of emotion she had no name for. Because somewhere tonight, somewhere between the questions and the glances and the soft cracks in Ethan's armor, the contract had shifted, and she was terrified that she felt it. First, the next morning arrived far too quickly, and Ava found herself staring at the ceiling of her penthouse bedroom, replaying every moment from the dinner the night before. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the warmth in Ethan's voice, the softness that slipped through when he was not guarding himself. It was dangerous. It was confusing, and it was becoming impossible to ignore. At 8 o'clock, Claire knocked and entered with the day's schedule. Mr. Cole will meet you in the lobby in 30 minutes, she said. There is a rehearsal walk for the luncheon, followed by a meeting with the public relations team. Ava nodded, trying to pull herself out of her thoughts. She dressed in one of the outfits Madison had tailored for her, a soft cream blouse tucked into a fitted black skirt that made her feel taller than her 5 feet 4 inches. When she stepped into the private elevator, her palms were already sweating. Ethan was waiting in the lobby, dressed in a navy suit that looked like it was cut with a ruler. His attention lifted from his phone the moment he saw her. Ava felt a flutter in her chest, an involuntary reaction she wished she could control. Morning, Ethan said. It was a simple word, but it carried that same softened edge she had heard at dinner. She returned the greeting, her voice quieter than she intended. Let us begin, he said, offering his arm. It took her a beat to realize he expected her to take it. When she did, the contact sent a subtle shock through her body. The board will observe how naturally we move together, he explained. Confidence, alignment, and familiarity. Ava forced herself to exhale slowly. Familiarity, she repeated under her breath. They walked toward the meeting hall on the lower floor, practicing a synchronized pace. But halfway down the hallway, the elevator chimed behind them. A man stepped out. A man who looked like Ethan, but older, with colder eyes. Charles Cole, Ethan's uncle. His presence shifted the entire atmosphere, like a storm cloud rolling into a clear sky. Ethan's arm tensed slightly under Ava's touch, but he did not pull away. Charles approached with a slow, assessing smile. Well, this must be the new wife, he said, his tone coated with mock approval. A bit unexpected, Ethan. Ava kept her posture steady, remembering every piece of advice Ethan had given her. She extended her hand politely. It is nice to meet you, Mr. Cole. Charles did not take her hand. Instead, he let out a short laugh and glanced at Ethan. You never fail to surprise me. 30 days ago you were telling the board marriage was the last thing on your mind. And now this. Ethan's voice turned cold, like steel sliding into place. My personal life is not your concern. Charles leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. Everything is my concern when the family name is involved. Ethan's jaw tightened, and Ava felt it through the tension in his arm. We should go, he told her. They stepped past Charles, but the older man added one last comment, low enough for only Ava to hear. Be careful, dear. Men like Ethan do not choose wives. They buy them. Ava froze for half a second before Ethan gently guided her forward. The moment the hallway door closed behind them, Ethan released a sharp breath. Do not take anything he says seriously, he said, voice clipped. He is trying to provoke you. And me. Ava nodded, though a knot tightened in her stomach. Does he always speak like that? Worse, Ethan replied. He believes he is entitled to run the company. My existence bothers him. Ava turned toward him, lowering her voice. Ethan, why did he say that? About buying. Ethan looked away for the first time all morning. He will use anything he can to undermine us. The contract, your background, the speed of this marriage. He wants the board to see you as a weakness. Ava swallowed hard. Am I? Ethan snapped his gaze back to her, sharp and certain. No. But he wants you to believe that you are. If you hesitate, you give him power. Ava held his eyes, feeling something fierce rise inside her. Then I will not hesitate. Ethan watched her for a long, unreadable moment. Something shifted in his expression, something almost like pride. Good, he said. We face him together. The words warmed her more than they should have. They continued walking, but the moment lingered in the air between them, heavy and dangerous. Because Ethan did not say for the contract or for the company. He said together. And Ava felt that truth settle deep inside her, awakening something. She had been trying very hard not to feel. Something real. The rehearsal continued after their run-in with Charles, but something in the air had changed, something sharper and heavier than before. Ava felt it in every step she took beside Ethan, in the way his jaw remained tight, in the way he stayed a little closer to her than necessary, as if guarding her from shadows she could not yet see. By the time they reached the reserved conference hall for the practice walk, the public relations team was already waiting. A woman in a red blazer, polished and intense, greeted them with a brisk handshake. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Cole, we will begin with your entrance. The title Mrs. Cole still made Ava's stomach twist, but Ethan answered smoothly, proceed. The team guided them through a mock entrance, adjusting posture, eye contact, and the small, nearly invisible cues that communicated closeness to anyone who watched. Your shoulders should angle toward each other, the woman instructed. A united front says more than words. Ethan shifted, adjusting his stance so subtly that Ava felt a warm shiver pass through her. When she angled toward him in return, their closeness felt like a pulse in the room. Good, the woman said. Now let us practice seating. They moved to a round table set up like the luncheon, and Ava sat beside Ethan while the team demonstrated where the powerful families would be placed. Charles would be directly across from them. The thought made Ava's heart race, but she forced herself to stay steady. She had promised Ethan she would not hesitate. Halfway through the session, Claire rushed in holding a tablet, her expression tight. Mr. Cole, she said, there is something you need to see. Ethan took the device, and Ava watched as his expression shifted from calm to fury in a matter of seconds. A cold fury, silent but lethal. What is it? Ava asked, her voice soft but steady. Ethan handed her the tablet. On the screen was a gossip column titled, The Curious Marriage of Ethan Cole. Did the CEO buy himself a bride? Under it was a grainy but unmistakable photo of her walking into the penthouse the morning she arrived. Ava felt her stomach drop. The article was full of insinuations about her financial background, her eviction, the speed of the marriage, and the claim that Ethan selected her as a convenient prop for his corporate war. Ethan's voice came out low and dangerous. This came from Charles. He has friends in the media. Ava swallowed hard, fighting the sting behind her eyes. It looks convincing. It is garbage, Ethan said sharply, stepping closer. And it will not stand. The public relations director approached. The article is spreading fast. We need to respond immediately. Ethan shook his head. No. Responding gives it power. We will counter it at the luncheon with truth. Ava blinked. Truth. Ethan met her gaze, and something raw flickered there. The truth that you are not a prop, and that I did not buy you. Ava felt her breath hitch, caught between fear and something warmer. The director nodded reluctantly. Then your presentation at the luncheon has to be flawless. The next hour was grueling. They practiced every movement, every angle, every possible scenario. At one point, the director placed a chair too close to Ava, forcing Ethan to shift beside her. His hand brushed her arm, just slightly. Enough to steady her. Enough to remind her she was not facing this alone. As they continued the exercises, their eyes met more than once. Each time, the connection lingered a heartbeat too long. Each time, Ava felt something inside her tighten. When the session finally ended, the team dismissed them with strict instructions for the luncheon. Ethan walked beside Ava toward the private elevator. Neither of them spoke until the doors closed. The silence felt thick with everything unspoken. Finally, Ava broke it. Ethan, are you sure I am not making this worse for you? He turned to her sharply, eyes fierce. You are the only part of this that is not making it worse. She froze, stunned by the intensity in his tone. I am the one putting you at risk, he continued. I am the one who dragged you into this war. And I will not let anyone humiliate you for it. Ava felt her chest tighten. I can handle it, she whispered. Ethan shook his head. You should not have to. The elevator slowed. For a moment, the soft hum of the machinery was the only sound between them. Then Ethan said something that made Ava's breath stop entirely. When Charles tries to break us at the luncheon, he said, I need you to remember something. Ava looked up. What? Ethan's voice lowered. That this is not an act. Not for me. Not anymore. The doors opened, but neither of them stepped out. Because with those words, the line between contract and reality shattered, leaving Ava standing in the wreckage of something she never meant to feel. The luncheon arrived with the kind of tension that felt almost physical, as if the air inside the grand hall had thickened from the weight of every stare, every whispered speculation, every sharpened glance aimed at Ava the moment she and Ethan stepped inside. Cameras flashed from discreet corners. Board members rose from their seats with practiced smiles that never reached their eyes, and at the far end of the long table sat Charles, watching them with thinly veiled satisfaction. Ethan rested a steady hand on the small of Ava's back, guiding her forward with quiet confidence. Do not let them rattle you, he murmured. You walk beside me as an equal. The words anchored her more than she expected. They took their seats, every movement scrutinized by the room. Charles leaned forward with a smirk that sent a chill through Ava's spine. Ethan, he said loudly, making sure every ear caught his tone, I see you brought your lovely bride. Congratulations. Truly, we were all shocked by the sudden wedding. Ava forced a polite smile, but Ethan's expression sharpened. Thank you, Charles, he replied coolly. Your concern for my personal life is touching. Charles ignored the jab. He turned his gaze to Ava. My dear, tell us, how did you and Ethan meet? It must be quite a romantic story. Ava felt the room tilt, felt dozens of eyes waiting for her to stumble. Ethan's hand found hers under the table. Not for show, for support. Ava lifted her chin. We met at work, she said clearly. Ethan had dropped something. I picked it up. It was a small moment, but sometimes the smallest moments change everything. A ripple of surprise moved through the table. Charles's smile tightened. How inspiring, he said with false sweetness. And tell me, dear, were you aware of the responsibilities that come with being a Cole? Our family has a reputation to uphold. Strength, sophistication, legacy. Ava met his stare, refusing to shrink. Legacy means nothing if it is built on tearing others down, she said softly. Several board members shifted in their seats. Charles's eyes narrowed. And the accusations in the media, he pressed. The talk about being purchased? The word hit the table like a dropped glass. Ethan pushed back his chair so abruptly the room froze. He rose to his feet, his voice cutting through the hall with cold precision. Enough. My wife is not a commodity. She is not a tool. She is not a prop in your political games, Charles. The board fell silent. Ethan continued, his tone steel. Ava is the only person at this table who has never lied to gain influence. She is the only one who has never betrayed this family for power. And she is the only one who stood beside me without expecting anything in return. Ava felt her breath tremble, her heart catching on every word. If you want to challenge my leadership, Ethan finished, do it directly. But leave her out of your desperation. For a moment, the entire room stood still. Then one board member on Ethan's left nodded. Well said. Another followed. Then another. Charles's control fractured in real time. He tried to speak, but the chairman raised a hand. Charles, this behavior is unacceptable. The board will address your conduct in a private session. It was a warning, a serious one. The luncheon resumed, but the power had shifted entirely. When the meeting concluded, Ethan guided Ava out of the hall, his hand never leaving hers. The moment the doors closed behind them, Ava exhaled shakily. You did not have to defend me like that, she whispered. Ethan turned to her, intensity burning through the last remnants of the ICCO mask he used to wear so easily. Yes, he said, I did. And I will. Every time. Ava felt her chest swell with something she had been trying so hard to ignore. Ethan, the contract only has 20 days left, she said softly. What happens after that? He stepped closer, his voice lower, gentler. That depends on what you want. She looked up, searching his face. And what do you want? Ethan reached into his suit pocket and pulled out the folded contract. Slowly, deliberately, he tore it down the center, letting the pieces fall between them like the final shedding of a lie. No more contracts, he said. No more conditions. No more pretending. He reached for her hand, his voice trembling just barely. Ava Hart, stay with me. Because you want to. Not because you signed a paper. Her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. I want to, she whispered. I want you. Ethan's breath caught, and he pulled her into his arms, not with the practiced restraint of a man performing for cameras, but with the raw, unmasked certainty of someone who had finally stopped running from his own heart. Weeks later, they returned to the same photo studio, but this time there was no script, no posing, no instructions. The photographer simply said, just be yourselves. And for the first time, being themselves was more than enough. The final picture captured Ethan looking at Ava the way a man looks at the one thing he never thought he would deserve, and Ava smiling back like she had finally found where she belonged. Not in the penthouse, not in the company, but in him. Their story had begun as a contract, but it ended as something real, something lasting, something chosen.